This is the Authority Company podcast, conversations with leaders that are designing our future. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and my guest today is someone who believes getting dressed isn't just about trends or rules. It's a blend of self-expression and smart science. Aricia Symes is the author of the new book, The Style Formula, The Art and Science of What to Wear. And she's the founder of Unfoldid, a personal styling company that helps people from stay-at-home parents to Grammy nominees discover their unique style ID. If you've ever stared into your closet and thought, I have nothing to wear, or if style has ever felt more like pressure than possibility, this conversation might just change the way you get dressed. Aricia, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Joan? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I'm awesome. And so I love speaking to experts of fashion because I, as an 80s kid, like the only way we had access to fashion was if you watched MTV or your mom had a magazine. So the way you experience fashion in real life was if you wore a horrible outfit, people weren't afraid to say, that doesn't work, or that doesn't fit, or that doesn't match. I was always obsessed with matching. To this day, I have like, I think I need therapy of like from my childhood of people telling me my clothes don't match. So I need to ask you, how did you fall in love with this world of, and you talk about this blend of art and science, which we'll get to, but tell me how you fell in love with fashion just to begin with.
I mean, it is kind of a funny path that I took because I grew up, on a family farm. I have four brothers, and I feel like that, but I feel like that's part of my journey, right? I grew up that way, and then at some point, I decided that, you know what, I'm ready to kind of take on my own persona. I wore my brother's hand-me-downs, all these things, right? And I was like ready to kind of take a more feminine turn with my look. And I had no idea how to do that, right? Especially coming from where I come from. I hadn't really done a lot with clothing when I was younger, and how I was going to present myself. And so I did what I usually do is I kind of dove into it and started to study a little bit. And then as I grew up, my career path kind of continued that for me. I loved Asian studies, wanted to go work over in Asia, ended up in manufacturing of shoe design, manufacturing and operations. And that kind of I continued to get jobs in the fashion industry. And then at some point, I just said to myself, this is it. Like, this is what I want to do, but I want to do it on my own terms. And I want to help others to really understand kind of outsider. How do you do this? How do you make it work? How do you wear matching without overdoing it? Right?
Yeah,
Things like that. So that's where it all started.
that's awesome. And I mentioned the fact that you talk about getting dressed is a blend of art and science. And if you watch your TikTok videos, you talk about like you use terms that you normally don't hear in like regular fashion chat. Like you talk about contrast and lines, and it's very technical. Tell me about the technical piece of this because I think for many it was almost like fashion is like, you just knew. There's no you just
Right.
know if it works or not. But there's more to it than just knowing, right?
Yes, there's a lot more to it, right? I mean, my mantra is always with anything. Your accountant quits on you. You Google it, you figure it out, you ask a friend, right? We study it. But there is something around fashion where people feel, I mean, that's my opinion, that people can get a little bit stuck and they feel like, oh, you either have that gene or you don't, type of a thing. But I feel like there's a lot you can learn. And then that allows you to have much more fun on the art side, right? Hence the art and science of style. So that's what I'm trying to just kind of make it more formulaic, more methodical for people, giving them outlines and strategies and guideposts so that they can embrace style and get dressed and feel great every day, right? You have to get up and get dressed every day anyway, so you may as well enjoy it. And it does impact how much money we're spending, how we feel that day, how we're representing ourselves to the world. So it does have that impact. So it is worth taking the time to do that. So, after working with thousands of clients, I am that type of creative person. Like maybe it's the Gemini. I love the creative side, but I also love a great spreadsheet. And I would just start to see these patterns with my clients, no matter if they were an executive or someone just graduating from college and heading out into the job market, places where they would get stuck. And I was like, these are places that we can kind of create this formula to guide you through, right? So that's kind of where it all started.
And anyone who watches your stuff knows that you often push back about the rules of fashion. And I think for many people, like, here's an example. So my wife and I moved down to Charleston about 5 years ago, and in the Northeast, there's this whole, and this could probably be around the country, but in the Northeast, there's a rule of no white after Labor Day. For whatever reason, you shouldn't wear white after Labor Day. And then I remember when we moved down here, my wife's it's like middle of September and it's like 90 degrees. And my wife's like, I have this white thing, but it's after Labor Day. I'm like, hon, I don't think the same rules apply here because it's like it's still summer. So tell me about. So, well, let's start with your sort of disdain, for lack of a better word, for rules, and then talk about some of these rules.
Okay. It's funny, I did, a TikTok recently about black pants, and it really kind of took off. And I think that's what it is. It's not that the rule is wrong, but it only applies under certain situations, right? So depending on your body science, your proportions, as well as your style goals, black pants, yes, they have less visual interest, right? So they draw the eye less. So they are, as as the old rule goes, black pants are slimming, right? But that may not be what's best for your proportions, right? Or so wearing black, so if you want your shoulders to look smaller, you would wear a black top, right? If you want your hips and lower body and thighs images to look smaller, then you would wear black pants, right? It's so to me, it's understanding the basis of these rules is what lets you apply them in a more universal way. And that's what I want for people. Like, we don't want to be memorizing what necklines work for me, right? So people are like, "Oh, you look good in V-necks and this and a list." Like, I can't remember a list like that. And then you see a neckline that's a little bit different from that, and you're out. You're like, "Okay, I don't know because that's not on my list," right? But it could be good. So that when I think about necklines, it's okay, is it deeper than it is wide, right? That's the rule. It's not you look good in V-necks and you look good in U-necks. So that's kind of my issue around the rules is that they're too narrow and they don't apply universally.
And so, how about the white after Labor Day? That's one of those old school one that your mom tells you. I mean, do you agree with my
Yes,
assumption of like, hey, it's warm, go for it?
yes. Well, the thing is, right, if you think about what's going on in the fashion industry right now, all the rules are out the window, right? With all the casual dressing, all that's going on, all the non-binary dressing, everybody can wear everything, which I think is fantastic because it allows us so much more freedom of expression. Right? Now, you're not trying to fit within parameters like wearing white after Labor Day. You're able to kind of make your own decisions, have your own fun with clothing, and express yourself the way you want to. Like maybe you wear white after Labor Day as a rebellious statement, right? I mean, it's not all that rebellious these days, but
Right.
so yeah, and there's always ways to adapt anything, right? Like whether it's a trend, or a color or a rule, right? If you love white, there's always ways to incorporate it. But so there are no hard and fast rules for sure. But you're right. Wear the white.
Yeah. You mentioned talk about the fact how casual dress has become more popular. I think a lot of it stems from the pandemic when the athleisure market just exploded. And it is funny how, even though I don't think we're as casual as we were during the pandemic, it has had this ripple effect of, I mean, me personally, like I would never wear like athletic joggers to the mall or a movie theater or something like that. But now I feel like perfectly fine wearing a Viore, joggers or something like that.
Right.
Tell me
Right.
about, like, as someone who's like who fashion, runs through their blood. When you see these shifts, is it just like you kind of go with the flow because there's no way there's no way to push back on it?
Yeah, I guess I feel like it it's like any other trend, right? So the whole athleisure wear trend, you don't have to like every trend, first of all, right? There's so many trends out there. There's a lot of them that I personally don't like, right? That's my choice, and I have to wear what resonates with my personal style. So it's not about liking or not liking it because as you're saying, there's all different ways to carry out a trend anyway, right? So wearing a kind of modern Viore, like you said, sweatpant to the movie theater. It's more about it's not what you do, it's how you do it, right? And the same idea, it's not what you wear, it's how you wear it, right? So you can wear, a pair of sweatpants in a very kind of sophisticated way. I did some work with Stride, right, and their whole the Wolverine group, and they had to wear their products to, and this is back when people were wearing straight up suits. They had to wear their products to their meetings, their big corporate meetings in front of clients. So they're wearing their Reebok, track jackets. They had to wear the sneakers. So I went in and consulted with them on how to do that in a way that looked really sharp, right? That was like business appropriate to be sitting in across the table from people in suits and ties. Right. And there is a way to do that. So it's really about learning those tools. And that's what, again, I kind of go back to. There are tools that you can use to help you with that. Right. So I have like a leveling system that I use. Kind of and again, I get geeky that way, right? I have like a little point system. So are you wearing a button down shirt, or are you wearing a collared polo shirt? And that helps you, right? Are you wearing like a formal dress pant or a dressed up sweatpant, right? Those kind of give you different numbers, and you can kind of level your outfit, right? So when we saw, I don't know, however many years ago, I can't keep track of time, say 5 years ago, right? That when it was like the whole suit with a button down shirt, no tie, and sneakers. That's
Right.
like a great example that everyone was adopting because it was out there in the world. You could see it, so you could copy it. But that's a perfect example of leveling. You're taking a very formal traditional suit and you're pairing with a pair of sneakers, right? Like I say to people who prefer more feminine dressing, you're not going to wear, a navy blazer with a navy skirt, navy pumps, pearls, and a white blouse, right? You're just gonna swap the blouse for, like, a cool t-shirt, right? You're gonna swap the navy pump for, like, maybe a cool loafer, right? So you're still taking the pieces, you're combining them in a different way. And it's tools and formulas like that that make all the difference.
Yeah. One more note on that too is, a big thing, and as a Gen Xer, I don't subscribe to this, but like, uh, for maybe boomers, it is when you used to go flying, you'd wear a suit or a dress, and you look like you were looking good. And now, I mean, you literally see people in pajamas
Yeah.
on airplanes nowadays. Um, what as someone who's so in love with fashion, and you see sort of like this sort of evolution of like how the standards that people were once used to are now lowered to an exponential rate. Do you have any feelings about that? Or you, again, going back to just, whatever works for your comfort and all that jazz. But in terms of like society, how it's sort of very acceptable now that you really, I mean, obviously we see these like clickbait
Right,
stories of like, I was booted off this plane for wearing these booty shorts. You'll see stories like that.
right,
But
right,
generally, people don't care what you're
right,
wearing on a plane.
right. The whole crop
Right.
top argument from Wall Street Journal, right? Like, yeah, so it's out there, and I feel like we are in a transition right now, right? So this is relatively new, and it came on very quickly. I think starting, like you said, with COVID. So I think people are adjusting to the idea that, yeah, you can wear whatever you want, but you are now in charge of how you present yourself to the world, right? So no longer is your company or your boss going to send you a sheet of paper that tells you exactly what you can and cannot wear, right? So the good side of that is we have a lot more freedom to express who we are, a lot more freedom to be comfortable, whatever that means, sensory issues, all those things. But it also means you have to now do more work in deciding how you want to present yourself to the world. And that's a change for a lot of people, right? So, in my opinion, there are a lot of ways you can be absolutely comfortable in so many different things with all the modern fabrics out there. So to me, there's very little excuse these days to like use kind of comfort. So I really think people need to step back and kind of think about, okay, how do I want to present myself to the world, right? Because as we mentioned in the book, it's 55% of your first impression is that first moment, when visual first 3 seconds when someone sees you, right? So it's a reality, and I believe we live in a very visual world right now. Like podcasts now have video, right? There's a good example.
Yeah.
Right? And social media. So I think that's a change that people are getting used to. So I do feel like it's when I see someone that isn't as dressed up, like, it doesn't bother me. I don't kind of I it's funny because I have clients who ask me that if I walk around analyzing the world from that lens, and And I do and I don't, but I'm not thinking about that when I'm not in work mode. I guess I'm observing it because I see how the world is changing, but it's not something where I'm doing this kind of personal judgment on people walking by. But
That's
it
a good way to
isn't
live too. You don't wanna be judging people all day long.
exactly, and that's not what I do. That's not what I do with my clients anyway, right? It's all about kind of finding out where people are, and seeing where they want to go. And some people have more trouble with that with others, kind of figure out what do I want my brand to be? How do I bring my personal, my style personality into work and start to build my personal brand within within the brand of the place that I work, or within my dating life or within my coffee with friends gym looks, right? It should be ever present. And then you're mixing and matching your pieces, and that's when you're really kind of creating your own personal style. So I think it's an evolution right now in answer to your original question that we're going through this time where people are starting to realize, "Oh, is this what I wanna wear?" Yeah, I think the freedom I guess what I'm saying is, like, the freedom of, like, "Woohoo, I can wear whatever I want." We're in the peak of that, like, "Yay, I can wear my SpongeBob SquarePants or be in my underwear for a podcast."
Yeah,
But like everything in life, it
yeah.
it's a wave. It's gonna come back down, and people are gonna find that happy medium and start to embrace their personal brand.
Yeah, it's funny too, that evolution comes quick too because, when I relocated to, Charleston, South Carolina, it was, like, a few weeks before the pandemic, and I remember I went to the office and I was wearing a very typical, like, New Yorker, like, winter outfit. I was wearing slacks with a sweater with my button-down shirt untucked, so you see a little bit of the tails sticking out.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
very normal, like, like, essentially, that is, like, your typical, like, bro outfit in New York,
Oh,
right? And so I was in the office, and one of the managers of the company, older gentleman, old school Southern guy, pulls me aside. He goes, "We do not wear our we do not wear our tails untucked in the office." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. I mean, I'll just tuck it in." Fast forward through the pandemic, all of a sudden people are wearing like shorts and polo shirts. I mean, and this is just like in a span of like a few months, which is very funny how quick these changes happen. Another thing that I think, going back to the point you made about how people want to perceive themselves and how they feel comfortable being themselves, I think also there's this blur of I don't think people can separate their home life from their outside life. Because before it was, yeah, I think of myself as a kid. Like I went to Catholic school, in grammar school. I would wear my uniform, and as soon as I got home, I'm ripping
right.
the shirt and the tie and the pants. But that hard line doesn't exist anymore. And an example of this is recently I've been going to the movie theater, summer movie season, and I don't know if this is a new trend or not. People are taking their blankets from home, like
Yeah.
they're like pink or blue, like
Pillows.
relaxing, and they're taking it into the movie theater with them. And I was like, wow, like it's
Yeah.
like again going back to the lines are blurred of like I'm
Right.
just gonna act like I'm home outside.
And airplanes, you see that. I
Yeah,
think they started having to there were so many pillows and blankets coming on with the carry-on that they had to start I know, it is, it's an interesting but, it's kind of what happens when there's a big change though, right? The lines get blurred, and now I think we're slowly working out ways to kind of find that happy medium, separate them back out where everybody's happy and comfortable, but I'm thrilled that there's so much more freedom. The restrictions that we had in the past around dressing were very limiting, and I think especially for men, actually, right? Suit and tie, suit and tie. I mean, it was easy, right?
yeah.
Like, you get invited to a wedding, you know, oftentimes it's the feminine dresser that's like, "Okay, what am I gonna wear?" The guy already is like, I already know," right? So, it is I'm really enjoying that freedom, and I think once we get through this kind of transition and people get a little more used to it, everyone is going to enjoy it. Even though there's a push and pull that's happening right now, I think we're gonna find that happy place and everyone's gonna be happier for it.
Nice. All right, let's dig into the book a little bit about the science side of it. And you write about body architecture. Tell
Yes.
me about why that is so important. Again, going back to the nerdy science stuff that you do, Aricia. What do you mean by body architecture?
So, body architecture is really kind of the foundation of style. It's the foundation of And what it does is it really tells us what cuts are gonna work for our body proportions as well as our style goals, right? So, when we talk about our body architecture, it's all about the bone structure. So I often say to my clients, like, think about, doesn't have anything to do with size. It's about, like, if you were looking at your shadow, right? What would that outline be, right? So we're looking at things like, are the shoulders wider than the hips? Are your legs longer than your torso? Right? So a great example that I often use with clients, and it's actually um, easier example for men's dressing is, you go to the suit shop back in the day, and they'd say, okay, your jacket should end at the notch, you know, in your
Your hand.
hand, right? Without any regard to how tall you are, without any regard to if your legs are longer or shorter than your torso, right? So also, I'm going to put my husband on the spot. So my husband, he has a long torso and shorter legs. So when he would go to the suit, I'm like, stop, you got to hem the jackets up shorter because it visually elongates the legs and shortens the torso, right? No one is looking to make sure your jacket is hitting right at this spot. Like, nobody cared. Nobody's ever noticed except for the tailor, right? And
That's one
the
of those
person
rules
holding
you
it.
talk about.
But it's one of those rules, right? And but it doesn't have anything to do with my husband's actual proportions, right? And what we want to do is use clothing to do the work for us. We're like paying all this money for a suit, for any piece of clothing. It should be doing some of the work for us. We shouldn't be manipulating it, tucking it, doing this or that to make it work, right? We paid money for it, especially with tailoring, right? So it's as simple as that. Okay, we're gonna hem that jacket 2 inches shorter. Now your proportions are more balanced. Now your legs look a little bit longer. The whole silhouette looks taller and leaner. It's simple things like that.
How can people understand their body architecture? Because you make it make a sense. But me, I'm now internalizing. I'm like, I mean, I guess I'm on the shorter side, so my legs are short. So like, how do people discover their body architecture?
Right,
Besides
right.
working with you, obviously.
Right, I know, right? I know. We talk about a lot of this in the book and ways to do it. I mean, it's a lot of it's there's a lot of simple measurements, right? So, and I think actually that's a really good example of kind of what you just said. You said, "Oh, I'm short, so I probably have short legs," and that's exactly kind of what we talked about at the beginning. It's like, okay, it's a very simple thing to find out, right? We can get out a tape measure, measure the leg line, and you have to know, obviously, the Vitruvian man, right? Those kind of
Right.
proportions, kind of knowing where the leg starts technically. But it's very doable, and we kind of walk you through it. We also have, an online course where you can do some of that, where it kind of walks you through it in a more methodical way. Um, but it's not hard, but I think it's not hard to kind of execute, but we don't think of fashion in that way. We think, I wonder if my shoulders are broad. I wonder if my leg. So a few simple measurements, and that's what we do with all of our clients before we start doing anything, before we start shopping, editing a closet. Everyone on the team is trained on the methodology of, you need to know your proportions. You need to know what's going to work for you before you start shopping, tossing all of those things.
Nice. All right. One more geeky thing: color science. You talk about in the book. And again, me being from Northeast, the Northeast outfit is black and gray, and then a couple of white shirts. So,
Very
and
New York, yeah.
very New York. And I think, and also, it's part of it is it works, right? Because black and gray kind of works with everything. One of the fake rules, I'm sure. But also just the ease of which you can go from one world to the other. If you have a black or gray shirt, it could go from casual to dressy in like a snap, just like
Right.
with an accessory or stuff. But tell me about color science.
Right. So color science is actually similar to what you're saying. So color science is all about, again, so we do kind of your proportions, start to understand your body architecture. The next step is your color science, because that basically it's the colors that work with your natural coloring, right? So even if you dye your hair or do these things, like you kind of have a baseline of whether you're warm or cool, are you high contrast or no? How deep is your skin tone? How light is your skin tone? And certain tones, certain colors tend to highlight and give you that glow. It's not just about what works with your coloring. It also is what you can use to build your entire wardrobe around. And that's what I think people forget. So just like you said, black and gray is easy. And you're right. My first thing when I meet someone who wears all black is let's add some gray. Like that's that. Yeah. Right. Like, so again, it's like meeting people where they are is like, okay, what's that next step? If you're using color science, you understand what coloring works for you. You get your palette. Everything in that palette is what you can then use to build your wardrobe. So then you make a mini palette, and then everything in that palette, just like black and gray, will all work together seamlessly, right? So I sometimes give the example of I feel like each of my clients, there's something that's kind of get that they're stuck. Like maybe they're really good at finding cuts that work well for them, but they're struggling with finding colors that work for them. Or the other way around. They're really good at picking great colors, but then they're not in the right cut. So I've gone into closets and seen, here's a good example, like their neutral, like their neutral column is a like a deep chocolate, right? Brown's really big right now. So they have great chocolate brown pants, chocolate blazer. Like instead of a black blazer, they've gotten the chocolate. So they're doing great. Then they went out and they bought like, the purple top, like the bright purple top, because they're like, well, I like purple too, right? And that's great. But now you have all your basics, all your top essentials, and that top doesn't go with those essentials, right? And
So what would purple, for this example, Aricia, what would purple go with? Would that be more in the blacks?
so someone who bought brown is probably would look better, I'm guessing, because I haven't met them yet. No.
Got it.
Navy, right? So their basics are navy instead of black, right? So again, it's
Okay.
picking that like color column, the neutrals that work for you, and then bringing in pieces that work with, and your palette does that automatically. So
Okay.
you do your color science, you get your palette, like, oh, I'm just gonna pick anything from this palette, and it's going to work together. So then you go into your closet and you can blindly pick things, get dressed in the dark, and you're good, right?
That's awesome. Dressed in the dark, yeah. That's something your mom used to say, right? Did you get dressed in the dark this morning when you don't match? Yeah, we're showing our age, Aricia. All
See, if
right,
you
so
use
let's
your
give
color
our.
science, you can do that.
That's true. That's true. It is your bag. So let's give a little plug to your day job, Unfoldid. Walk us through like a typical session with a client. Like how does it? I mean, I know we've kind of did drips and drabs here, but tell me like from the jump how it all comes together.
Yeah, really my mission when I started Unfolded way back when, was to kind of part of it was the idea of kind of standardizing that deliverable and making sure that people got their body science, their colors, their top essentials list, really kind of walk them through the whole process. So we have an app that we use with clients, and those are those first steps. Like, what are your proportions? Are you short or long waisted? Is your torso longer than your legs? We go through all of that at the beginning. We go through your color science, and then we use our really specific top essentials list to go through and start editing the closet based on the science that we've uncovered. And of course, also your personal style, right? Like kind of looking through and deciding what do you innately love? And that could be a chair in your living room or your favorite top, right? Those are all come together to find out like what in your heart of hearts do you love, and then we want to incorporate that into your personal brand, that into your entire wardrobe. So that's the third piece. And then we edit and create a targeted shopping list of anything that's really missing that's going to get in the way, taking out things that maybe aren't the right color or maybe washing you out, taking out cuts that aren't working for you. So it's that whole process that we go through with every client. And I as you can tell, I love it, right? Yeah, I absolutely love it because often people, when we go and meet a client and maybe they're a little nervous about the process, but a lot of people are doing a lot of things right. And I cannot tell you how many times people have said, oh, I've just never thought about that, right? So I had a client who we were going through her closet and we had just talked about what cuts are going to work. And she was petite. So kind of big flowing things didn't work great. And we're heading into the closet and we're pulling out tops. We pull out one, there's a navy top. It's got a V and it's really billowy. And she's like, I love it, but it doesn't look that great on me. Like we know a lot of this. We innately know a lot of it, but we can't replicate it because we haven't taken it down, kind of used that style formula to figure out the crux of what's going on, the crux of what are the cuts that are going to work. So we pull out top after top, and I'm looking at them, and they're all very similar cuts. There's very little difference in the cut. They're all different colors. They're all beautiful. Um, and I will never forget where she just lost it. She completely cracked up, and she herself held up all the tops and said, "Oh my gosh, these are all the same. These are all exactly the same top. I've bought the same top that I know doesn't even look that great on me over and over and over because I like the top." It and that's what I want. What I want is when my clients text me and they're saying, "I'm at the store, I'm shopping, I'm flipping past, I'm not even bringing in the dressing room because you told V-necks don't work. Out, out, out." And now I have a much smaller group that I'm going to take to the dressing room, try on, and simplify, right?
That's awesome. And obviously science is a big part of how you do it. But and so you probably see patterns with a lot of your clients. Is there a common one that comes up a lot with a lot of the folks you work with? Is it color issues? Is it, wearing the wrong size or not knowing your measurements? What are some of the common things that you run into where you're like, oh, here we go again. It's another one of these we got to work with.
I know. So usually when we have a new client, that's when we're doing, your style ID and really diving into all the science because you need to know all that before we start doing anything, right? And so I usually see there's probably like top 3 things that I see that we've touched on a little bit is someone who's great at finding cuts, but they're picking them in the wrong colors because they love pink. So they buy a lot of pink, even though maybe it's not the right color for them, right? But the irony is there are pinks. You can wear almost any color if you adapt it to your color science. So we could find a pink that works. But so I'd say the main ones, it's someone who kind of can pick out the right cuts, but they're not picking out the right colors. Or someone who's picking out the right colors, but is having a hard time figuring out what cuts work for them, right? And then the third one I would say is the differential between kind of those. We have our really solid ID essentials list for clothing, shoes, and accessories. So people have either a lot of fun pieces and none of the, I'm just going to say it, the boring pieces, right? Look, because I admit it, it's not as much fun to go out and buy a pair of black pants, right? As it is to go out and buy like a sequin tank top or a flowery pair of pants, right? So, but that's where you should be spending your money is on those core items so that when you buy the sequin tank top, you have something to wear it with. So that would be the third one. They either have a ton of basics and nothing fun to incorporate their style personality, or they have all the fun pieces and none of the basics. They can kind of anchor those. So those are probably our top 3.
That's awesome. That's great. Great education for me. So Aricia, I always wrap up these conversations taking folks behind the dedication of the book, and you dedicate your book to my family who stuck with me through drafts and doubts. Tell me why it was so. I mean, obviously you love your family, but why was it important for you to dedicate the book to them?
Oh my God, I could have written a paragraph, but I tried to control myself with that. You know what? My kids and my husband, they're so supportive. This is my office in my home, but not in my closet. And they are such a part of my business. They help me in so many ways that, they had to be a piece of this. My son helped me set up this webcam. They lug clothing around for me. My son Colin has some of the graphics in the book that we're using on the website that he designed for me after I went back to him 500 times. Not quite, not quite. They're all involved. Nathan helps me with my social media, and my husband just is great about supporting me in any way he can to help make all this happen, like life balance, right? And they've always been there for me, without a doubt, and it's amazing. I love it. And yeah.
That's awesome. Her name is Aricia Symes. The book, The Style Formula, The Art and Science of What to Wear. Aricia, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This is great.
And that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to find out more about Aricia and our other fantastic authors, go to theauthoritycompany.com.